Today, I chat with Dr. Hava Rose. She is a chiropractor who takes a holistic approach to healing. She leads journaling workshops and retreats to help people find healing in community. So on this episode, we cover how physical pain is connected to emotional wounds, steps to move through those wounds, and how journaling can literally change your life. Hava shares with us her own personal story, and my hope is that this episode inspires you to think more holistically about your healing process. Let's dive in.
One thing I want to start off with is the admiration that I have to the worlds that you blend. Like you blend chiropractic work with spiritual work / emotional work, emotional processing work, whatever you want to call it. But you blend these two very beautifully. I was looking at your website and this quote really stood out. And you wrote, "So much of the pain I was addressing and caring for was simply unprocessed life experiences, emotions, and thoughts that the body was holding on to." So it sounds like somewhere in chiropractic world, like you noticed that it wasn't just pain, like there was something deeper, right?
Yeah, for sure. Not only through my own experience of through my patients, also just seeing week to week or every other week the same people and seeing like, okay, well, we're addressing this, but you also become like a little therapist when you're seeing, I think, any service industry, right? So you start to like, oh, yeah. And sometimes it would transmute like the pain of a patient that wasn't processing or, shared a little bit, but like kind of in a, not to like put any negative connotation around it, but more of a just like a vent session while I'm working on them. I would notice sometimes if I didn't do something for myself before that I would leave with that same pain.
Whoa.
If someone was having, like, I had one patient in particular I'm thinking of at one point, and if there was like a left shoulder pain that I was addressing while he's venting and I'm more in the world of him venting or not focused on just like protecting myself and working on it, I would later in that day be like, oh, my left shoulder. Like, what's, and I'll be like, I literally picked up all that energy and emotion.
Whoa. What did you do then to dispel that from you?
I would try to just do some breath work. And then I just became more aware of protecting and doing things for myself before a day of adjustments. Those are days I try to be better when I know I'm also addressing bodies and people. So yeah, from my own experience, I was having physical things, and it's happened multiple times and iterations in my life. And it still happens where something manifests physically for me and I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then, I should probably do something about that, like journal or move my body or like move energy out of me or, some things like that.
Yeah. Everyone has their like go-to thing when they're feeling physically ill, emotionally ill, mentally ill. How did journaling become your thing?
Well, journaling is something that I was avid with in my teenage years. So it was more of just an innate leaning into where I was a lot less communicative with words in my teenage years. I had, I think just, a rough teenage household situation where I just never felt understood, which I think a lot of teenagers feel, but I was also a little rebellious, and journaling was something I did like in the like late hours where I would like restless and not be sleeping, and I would just be under covers or like with my little lamp, and I would just be ramming like, love things about crushes, the deep love we feel, or like fucking off the world, or I would just be ramming in my journal. So something that was like the only place I felt
safe,
I could express safely and be like understood, or didn't have to worry about what the reaction was going to be on the other end. It was just a place for me to like dump it. So that was really, in retrospect, a really crucial piece of my survival in those years, to make it extreme, I guess. But so it became just, for me, that was like kind of what I looked forward to in my alone time. And I often didn't feel like I could be alone in my house. That was also probably a piece of it. Journaling, that's where it kind of started for me. And then later in life was the opportunity to then like read back, because I never threw journals away. So anyway, so I have all these journals. So reading them back in my late 20s, early 30s, it was really interesting. And you just start to see very similar patterns throughout your life.
What did you find?
Oh, I play a victim hard. That was one of the things I was like,
Mm.
damn, I really lean into the victim role.
I love that you said that, first of all. I'm sure that's not easy to admit.
Oh my God. I still battle with it within.
Yeah. We share similar values with journaling. It's 100% my safe space. And I've had
Yeah.
people, some people say that they don't know how to journal or that they feel uncomfortable doing it. Do you think that it requires a certain level of openness slash intimacy with your own emotion to like feel comfortable getting it out?
I think, yeah, I think it's definitely that's a piece of it. And in our world, we're not really embraced. Well, maybe more now, but
Mm.
the embracing of your own inner thoughts and inner world, it's not really supported.
Yeah.
So if you're not exploring it on your own, or if you're not like introduced to it in some way, like I don't think it is something that you would naturally think about doing, because it does lean into needing to embrace that inner
Yeah.
world. And we're not in our world in general, it's not really supported, that
Right.
concept.
Yeah.
And I actually talk about this in my workshops a lot, the idea of being alone, just period. It's a scary
Mm.
thought for a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And so journaling is like really like gets into the depths of the solitude that can be really scary. And so some of
Hmm.
the work doing workshops in community, I sometimes feel like that actually supports people getting to deeper layers, because they're kind of in the space of surrounding themselves with people doing the same thing. It becomes one,
Mm.
support, becomes two, like, oh, he's doing it, it's okay if I do it. But yeah, I hear the same questions of like, I don't know how, I don't get it. And that was a lot of like the impulse to create the journaling workshops,
That is
I
the
guess.
most beautiful thing. Yeah. For those of you listening that have never been to Hava's workshops, she creates a space where everyone like we literally journal together and then just say what's on our mind. That is the most beautiful, simple thing that people have the capacity to do that they don't normally do alone.
No. And the hope is that at least if they experience it in the community, and then they're presented with this concept
Mm.
of guided journaling, like a quick tool that,
Yeah.
oh, I do know how to journal.
Yeah.
I can do journaling. Like actually doesn't, it's like a lot more simple than I thought, you know? And so that's also the hope, is that like they walk away feeling inspired
Hmm.
to put this in their bag of tools to like tap in with themselves and take care of themselves and check in with themselves. So
Right, right.
that's the hope.
I mean, I think it happens always. What do you think happens when we do finally express emotions that are unprocessed and thoughts? What happens in the body?
It's definitely not linear. It's not going to be one thing that happens. I
Mm.
do think there's multiple. I think sometimes when depending on the amount of time you've been holding something or feeling something not feeling something, but holding something that you're
Mm.
not feeling, and then all of a sudden
Mm.
you're feeling it or addressing it, it can create chaos in the body, is one thing
Ooh, say
physically. Like
more.
it can bring up a lot. So there's a concept, I'll bring it, like there's a concept about when you detox, like actually like do a juice cleanse. There's this thing that's often addressed when you detox, that at some point in your detox, you might feel old injuries that you haven't felt in a long time. So if you sprained your ankle really badly 5 years ago, and like, it's been done and done, and your body's, compensated or done what it's needed to do, that you don't feel the sprain anymore, you're able to be
Mm.
functional. When you detox, you might start to feel ankle pain at some point in your detox. So it's a similar idea. I'm bringing it in to share that it's a
Mm.
similar concept of sometimes
Yeah.
when you start to tap into things that you forgot about, quote unquote,
Ooh. Yeah.
you will start to bring the pain. There are things that will surface. They'll come to the surface again.
Hmm.
And that's the opportunity. I always say that's the opportunity to then physically do something about it.
Mm.
Like now that you're bringing awareness to it again, that is where a really important piece is, to connect the emotional body to the physical body, to create the connection. So bringing it up in your journaling session, and let's just say like a breakup, like just to bring some context, like you went through a breakup 2 years ago. Maybe you were mentally abused or emotionally abused in it, right? You're journaling 2 years later, you're bringing up things that are connecting you back to that
Mm.
moment, and you start to probably get triggered to some fashion. Maybe you're crying, maybe you start to get an anxious belly again, like you're
Mm.
not digesting well. So when addressing it through the journaling or through that re-experience of what's going on, to then connect it to something physical so that you can actually release that energy is really powerful. And the physical can look different. For me, I know intuitively I just dance. I'm just like, if I'm feeling something, I
Yeah.
want to put on music and like physically move it out of my body. Like, but it's really important to do it in connection to. It's important to connect that practice of journaling, the stirring of the thought, the resurfacing to then, okay, let me go move my body now and
Intention.
start to, yeah. So that like one thing that can happen when people start to open up space again for themselves to process, the inner storm can happen again. And it's important
Right.
to then take advantage that it's here at the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do something differently instead of
Ooh,
pushing it down again. Let me actually bring it to the surface more and then push it out and make
yeah.
space in my body again.
Yeah. I think people are scared of that, of it coming up like, oh, I'd rather not see it, not think about it, not feel
Yeah.
it. But in reality, it's not true. It's always going to be there. It's
But
always going to be there.
always gonna be there, and I think, to note that you can feel it, and something
Mm-hmm.
that I know I'm guilty of is often I will feel it and allow myself to feel it, but
Mm-hmm.
then do nothing with it.
Uh,
So even if I
uh,
cry through it or, like, understand what's happening, I might be sulking on the couch, and
hmm.
then essentially, like, that energy is still living within me, even
Hmm.
though I'm aware
Yeah.
of it. That's something I have to work on, and I'm always working on,
Yeah.
is then, "Okay, let me actively do something with this. Let me not sit in it." Like, there's something beautiful about sitting in it, something,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed. Agreed. What are like the top three ways to, once you're sitting in it, you're feeling it, it's here, to do something with it? What would that action look like for someone?
Right. So one way would be then to like lean into the movement, a physical, like actually put on some music or maybe
Mm,
not music and dance. And dancing looks like however that feels. So it's just somatic movement, maybe even just like touching and
mm,
pounding
true.
and like throwing your head around a little. So that's dancing. Breath work is another really powerful thing when you're feeling these things. That's a lot of movement that you're going to
Mm,
be giving to your body and creating more space for it to move through you in that really focused breath work. That can be on your own if you're just thinking about big belly breath and sighing out, or if you're doing it in a guided sense of someone
mm,
helping and guiding you through transformational breath work is my favorite practice. One of the third things that can be really beneficial is also taking that and shifting environment. So even if
mm.
that's going for a walk outside. Like when you feel something and you're in a space that you feel it, carrying maybe that energy out of you by transforming and moving into a new environment. One of the things I always try to practice is actually taking a walk
Mm.
to shift perspective essentially.
True.
And
True.
then again, that's helping you move. You're using your body, you could be going through the thoughts, but you're also moving through it, bringing a different visual around you, different senses, different sounds.
I've never thought of it that way, of like
Oh,
the
yeah.
difference between sulking slash sitting in it and doing something with it. And it makes me think of the feminine and the masculine. The feminine is like
Mm,
sitting through it, feeling through it, and then also, okay, do something with it, take that masculine energy and act upon it. And
yeah.
I feel like in your journaling workshops, people get both. They get the opportunity to journal and feel through it and then speak it out to other people, right? Is
Yes,
it the same?
yes. Similar, yeah, so obviously we're not really doing, actually, I just had a workshop yesterday where we incorporated movement, which was cool,
Oh,
but the idea of, speaking, yeah, it's a really powerful way because a lot of times when you are feeling things and you're alone, like, you're not, I mean, I talk to myself sometimes, not everyone does,
same.
but, like, I think it's powerful, yeah, to then outward put it outward because also when you
Yeah.
speak it out loud, it
Mm,
also can sometimes be like, "Wait, what?" Like, it
yeah.
kind of can give you more clarity, and the powerful thing in the workshop is it's called the right echo, the community, and the echo is like the really important piece of first echoing thoughts to paper, second echoing them back to yourself because
Mm,
sometimes you will re-ingest and digest your words differently than they when they just sit here.
yeah.
And then the third echo would be then speaking and transforming those words into a voice and
Yeah.
allowing perspective. It's just like all these chances to shift perspective, to see things differently, to see things more clearly, and then in community to then connect to strangers
Mm,
with very familiar circumstances, right? Like a lot of people understand what you are going through.
Oh, yeah.
And like be like,
Yeah.
oh, yes, I know a time I felt like that. And this is what I did. Or.
Oh my God. Yeah. The amount of times in the journaling workshops where people have shared something and then everyone else is nodding like, yeah, me too. It's such a thing.
Yeah. The human experience is unique and wildly similar.
Yeah, agreed. How did you have such a holistic take, girl, on the way that you view healing. How did you feel integrating that with chiropractic work? Like it's so different from what traditional chiropractic work is about.
Yeah, chiropractic was something I kind of fell into, but I didn't know the philosophy and the science and the art of it till I got to school. And there was a lot of things
Mm,
that I was like, oh, this is kind of making sense to me. It's really about the root of issues, not about symptoms and covering symptoms,
mm,
masking. So to me, off the top, there was an alignment when I learned it, and then understanding that the goal of chiropractic is to get to the root. It's the spine where all of these nerves and synapses and messaging is happening. So like the
mm,
root, it's getting to the root. It's like, let's clear any potential issue at the root, not give you Tylenol for the headache.
mhm.
So there's an overlap for sure in that, just in the philosophy and the science and art of chiropractic. It's
Yeah.
definitely more on the holistic side. But, through it, I also see the world we live in, and I'm seeing patients that have pain that's very much has nothing to do with a physical, well, now is, but it's really not a
Right.
physical thing at all. And I'm just like, I got to be able to help people on the other end of this. Like,
Mm,
I would much rather hold space in the way I do with the journaling than chiropractic. Not to say I don't want to, but like to be able to help people on this end where they can actually do this for themselves if maybe they're just given some guidance initially,
yeah.
to
Yeah.
see people live in a more pain-free life. Wow, what a win. So like
Yeah.
so maybe I can start to do things on this realm while I still do things on the chiropractic side, but to
Mm,
help the cause. Like, let's bring it to the root and understand that so much of people's pain is this, unprocessed life that they're walking. And
it's
if
like
we can,
preventative.
yeah, so to me, even more than chiropractic, if I can really get to the preventative and the root,
Yeah.
to me, it would be at this level.
Hmm.
Same as what you're doing with coaching. Like, this is the
Yeah.
work I think that is like the preventative slash
Yeah.
yeah, holistic approach. Let's start here.
Yeah, because then you don't have to treat the disease and the illness because it wouldn't be there because
Yeah.
you've treated other. We're evolving for sure in such a rapid way. I feel so privileged to be living in this lifetime, girl. Like the work that we're doing is
Oh, it's
different.
wild.
What would you say to one person who is looking to get into journaling, but they don't know how? What advice would you give them?
The advice would be there is no how. Don't think
Mm,
there's a proper form. But for some people, structure is better. So they need to know, right? There's two things I always recommend trying. One would be for less structure, people who don't need as much structure and feel okay with that, is just what I've learned from the artist way, which is morning pages, which
mm,
is essentially when you wake up, just writing 3 pages straight. And it's a stream of consciousness. So it's the amount, it's just the amount, 3 pages. You're journaling for 3 pages. Once you hit 3 pages, you're done. So, and that's just kind of, you could write about your dreams, whatever comes up, whatever you're
mm,
waking up with in thoughts. So that would be one way to try to journal, and you'd be surprised where those 3 pages lead you. But if you need a little more structure, I always say, like, look around the room you're in and pick an object or a color, the first thing you see, write that down. So I'm in a room, hat, there's a hat behind me. So a hat would be the word. I would write it down, and then maybe music helped you. I always say get music without lyrics. Um,
mhm.
but essentially you would then write about hat. Anything like, what does hat stimulate for you?
Yeah.
You can write,
Yeah.
maybe at first you're like straw, brown, you could describe it, but it essentially will lead you somewhere. It generally always does if you just allow the pen to move.
Wow.
But, yeah, and to remind yourself, it's not about spelling, it's nothing that's about anything except releasing thought from your brain.
True.
Creating space, giving yourself a chance to actually look at your thoughts and, like,
Mm.
read your thoughts instead of keeping them running in circles up top.
Oh, that's smart. I can also vouch for morning pages. I love morning pages. It's
Do
the best.
you? I go in and out of
Yeah.
it.
Really, I just love
Yeah.
like writing, even if it's writing, I don't know what to write about today. Like it's just nice to know that I can channel the thought, not just have
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
roaming around in my thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to get your thoughts on paper. To like, okay, what is why am I thinking about this? And then you're like,
Yeah.
I don't need to think about this. Or you're like, oh, oh, this is what's been bothering me. Because sometimes
Yeah.
just gives you clarity, lets you read what's going on in your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so those are two ways that you could start to practice.
Those are good ways. Those are easy ways.
Yeah.
Nice and
Yeah.
straightforward. Since you've like done so many workshops and so many retreats, you've seen all kinds of people walk in and out before and after. What would you say is the number one emotion that people come in with before journaling and your workshops? And what's the number one emotion that people leave with after?
Oh, the number one is definitely emotion is like anxiousness or
Mm,
like nervous or like, yeah, there's definitely that energy a lot of the time.
yeah.
And when people leave, it's generally a sense, it's ease is a word I see a lot, powerful is a word I've seen a lot, and also like people feeling excited or
Mm,
energized, and there's a
yeah.
mix. Depends on the person, you know?
That's true. But that generally happens when you release. There's an
Yeah,
opening.
yeah, yeah. There's an opening. People and like I think just in the nature of who I am, the ease is one that happens a lot. People feel like calm and at ease, you know.
Yeah, with you specifically.
Yeah. And then dependent on I also feel like people get energized or feel like restored and like powerful. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it's always fun.
It's like thinking of Sigmund Freud's what is that thing? The iceberg. The
The
iceberg.
what?
The iceberg. You haven't heard of the iceberg
I feel like
analogy?
I have, but you have to help me.
So it's like imagine an iceberg that's submerged underwater, and the top of the iceberg is usually pretty small, but in the bottom, submerged underwater, there's like this huge piece of the iceberg.
Is that with like the subconscious?
Exactly. So here we are. We have this iceberg. The top is the conscious mind, and the bottom is the subconscious mind. And through journaling, I feel like you help people access that subconscious layer. And it's
Yes.
so scary at first. Obviously, I think that's why you said that they feel anxious because they're like, oh my God, what am I going to find? But in reality, it's often not as scary once you speak it into existence, whatever it is that you have in that layer of
Yeah.
your unconscious mind,
Yeah.
right?
I think it's like also why not maximize your human experience by tapping
Oh,
into all of it, right? That's kind of my thing.
yeah, that's what we're here for. Otherwise, you're just going to take that baggage into another life.
Yeah, you might as well get it all now. Get use of all of it. See what magic can create when you bring it all together, you know?
Right, right. I mean, it's proven that this helps A in science and B just in your own personal life. Historically, like you make your living off of this. You help so many people journal because why? They get something positive out of it. So I
Yeah.
can't imagine what it's going to be like in Peru when you host your retreat. 7 days of
Uh
this. That's going to be
uh
incredible. So are you guys going to be journaling every day? Like, what is that going to be like?
yeah, I'm so excited. So I've done a handful of retreats through the Right Echo, the journaling
Mm,
workshops, for maximum like 3 nights, 4 days, and all stateside. So I'm so excited to be able to do it for a whole week because I feel like, wow, this is going to be, even for me, it'll be a learning experience to see what happens for people in a week of like
mm-hmm.
incorporating journaling into their daily life. Not to mention in a life where you're in the Andes Mountains and like in different
Girl.
culture. I mean, I've always dreamed of doing international retreats because for me, also a big piece of my own personal discovery and self-awareness has come through travel. I feel like
Mm.
when you travel and you're in
Oof.
different places, different environment, different cultures, different ways of living, it's an opportunity for you to learn so much more about yourself. And I always have. Every time I travel, I like come back like, oh, I'm a new person because
Yeah,
I've
same.
learned so much. So I've always dreamed of being able to integrate the work I do through the workshops and journaling and traveling,
Mm.
specifically like in places where it's a very different experience than where in Philadelphia where I am. And
Yeah.
so this is the first opportunity I'm getting to blend those, and like I'm
Yeah.
ensuring to bring in some of the cultural experiences. We're going to have sound healing from native Peruvians with their native instruments. We're going to do excursions through like their ancient history through some of the moon temples and sun
Wow.
temples and spaces, and integrating that with the journaling as an element that will show up daily. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen for some people with a week of journaling practice. I have a feeling it'll be the first of many international retreats.
Oh, hell yeah. With the way that this thing is selling out, like you have two
Uh,
spots left, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah. I'm excited I waited, even though I'd been wanting to do international retreats. I'm
Mm.
like waited for whatever reason, but I know that this space specifically was like, oh, I'm so glad that this is the first Samadhi Sacred Valley. I'm so glad this is the first retreat center and place and Peru specifically that like I'm doing it. There's something so magical. I'm like I don't really have a tagline, but in my head the tagline is remembering your soul, and soul SOL, because we're gonna soul being sun. The ancient Peruvians, Incans were, they operate off the sun. So
yeah, you're right.
They're very sun focused. I'm very moon focused. So I think I'm bringing the balance. I think it's going to be really cool to bring that energy, but remembering your soul, obviously you always, I think, I forget what book, maybe it's a book called Conversations with God, maybe. In the book, also talking about, self-discovery and finding who you are. In actuality, it's always actually just remembering who you are, because you're always that person, and it's actually just that like tapping in and remembering who you are. So I really that hit when I was like planning this retreat, and I was like, yeah, that's what this is. It's always the workshops, it's the opportunity, anything I'm doing, it's the opportunity to remind and remember. There's always a reference to like, I'm the new me, and in actuality you're actually probably closer to the old you.
Oh my God, yes. Yeah, as if it's like some external thing, but in reality we're just remembering the truth that was always there.
Yes. Yeah.
I will put that link on the show notes for anyone that wants to check that out, because I will say from personal experience, retreats in general are enormous ways to grow, because you're spending 7 days dedicated to yourself, to personal development. You're not going home and then turning on Netflix or like hitting up that friend that all you do is get drunk together. You're solely there for yourself. And that is what is going to be so beautiful about your retreat. Everyone's going to be there on the same page, like-minded individuals. Oh man, I wish I could join.
I know. Yes.
But as we wrap up, one last question for you on a note of vulnerability. I love ending with this question. What is one thing that you're currently working on, personally, relationally, professionally, whatever it is? But I ask this question because we often focus on the highlight reel. It is evident that you're amazing. You're doing incredible things, but you're also human. So what is one thing that you're personally working through?
Personally working through my relationship. That's real. Partnership 4.5 years. So just as life, there's a lot of evolution, and I'm just working on that. And in that, working on myself is like the commitment to myself and honoring whatever it is that comes up. Yeah.
Thank you. Relationships ain't easy.
No, they're not. And I think there's a falsification of them sometimes when they're like, oh, when you know, and like it all works out. And I'm like, yeah, there's definitely a knowing, but there's a lot of work. It's easy to just get whisked away in a relationship, but I think it's important to find that balance of serving yourself and the relationship, and not just serving the relationship.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Where can people find you?
Oh, people can find me in the world, Instagram is pretty easy, at hava.rose, and my website is www.drhavarose.com, and you can find the journaling community is at The Right Echo, WRITE.
All links will be in the show notes. People, you got to connect with Hava. She's amazing.
I love connecting. Hit me up.
Yeah, she's such a warm individual. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your gifts with the world.
Thank you, Karina.
See ya. If you enjoyed this podcast, there's one super special way that you can give back, and that is by liking and leaving a review. This is how the algorithm gets the message to spread the show, and together we can help people find healing one podcast episode at a time. You can find me on social media at Strategic Soul, or on my website at www.mystrategicsoul.com. I am looking forward to hearing from you, sharing space with you, and being on this path together. Ciao.